ERA Global is the place, is the destination. If you're looking to distribute your product, if you're trying to find a way to scale and get global impact and get global reach for your product, you have to be here. This event can change your life. So don't miss it. Make sure you come here. And guys, come to the show. Don't miss it. This is the place to be. Hey guys, welcome back to the Global Launch Summit here in Las Vegas, Nevada at the Palms. We've got ERA Global here. This event is bringing all kinds of minds together to talk about how you distribute product on a global basis and how you do the marketing side of it to make it effective. I'm joined by David Mainiero, who's the Chief AI Officer for AI Digital, right?
That's right.
And we're going to dive a little deeper into how AI is starting to affect marketing in general, and ultimately how it's creating efficiency across the board. So tell me a little bit about the company and what you guys do, and what kind of success you're having.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to talk at this conference. And at AI Digital, we are focused. Our mission is to be a force multiplier for our agency and advertiser partners. We think of ourselves as kind of a full stack operating partner, whether it's through placement and purchase and optimization of media, to helping with the strategy, the planning that goes into it, and really any way that we can help be a long-term strategic partner to the folks that we work with. And that is what the genesis of the division that I run, called AI Digital Labs, that's where kind of that idea was born, this idea of, okay, well, if we want to be a long-term strategic partner, how do we help people through the most pressing issue of our time right now?
So I think from a standpoint, when we come to the Global Launch Summit, there are marketers and product distributors from literally every country on the planet. And when you start to get deep into the challenge, most of them have no idea where to start. There's early adopters that adopted quickly on creative and said, how do we start leveraging AI and creative using voiceover or changes of language for actors and models, making them speak in whatever language you want. We've seen impacts in some of the call center, tricks that are out there that now require that you can do mostly AI driven. How do people really get started, and what's the first place they should start to think about AI in general?
It's interesting because everyone's starting point's a little bit different with this. I would say that most of the folks I talk to that have kind of a pulse on the industry or what's going on know that AI is going to be important for their business, but often I see people frankly paying lip service to the idea. They say AI is going to be transformational, it's going to change everything, but if that is their conclusion, I don't see much kind of paddling under the water, if to give kind of a duck metaphor here, to actually effectuate that change or be ready to adapt for it. And when I do, I see kind of an obsession. We're all told kind of to do more with less and try to deal with compressed margins and some of the financial pressures that we face. And that leads people to be really efficiency obsessed, which is a very good thing. But I have this analogy of, it's kind of like when electricity was invented. If people were like, wow, this is really exciting, I don't need to light my candles anymore. My reaction to that would be, well, yes, that's a great byproduct, but you're missing a little bit about how this is going to transform industry. Yeah. And so really level setting and kind of aligning as a leadership, whether you're at a company, whether you're at an agency, thinking about how's this going to affect my department, my work, not just how I can do it better, but how can it actually be completely different? How can I forge a new competitive identity?
Yeah, I think a lot of people lean immediately to automation. They think AI, I'm going to apply automation to it, when really automation is, you can use AI in automation. However, that first piece that we see is efficiencies. Eliminate the processes, eliminate the duplication processes. But that's really more automation than it is AI. I think where the transformative place starts to happen is when you get into iterative creative, when you get into systems that are starting to feed data loops back out, and you have proper data sets that are coming in, and AI is delivering a predictive solution, creating the prompts to create the creative again and push that back up out the other side so you can get to optimization loops. for us, we see that's where the journey is, and we think that if you can really effectuate that, if you can actually effectuate it, the challenge now is all the little pieces to put it together. It's getting quicker and quicker and quicker to get there, but can it be achieved? How quickly can it be achieved? And how fast is it going to move is the next big challenge.
Well, I would say that there are kind of, people like to say, X is the new moat. I think that agility is the new moat. It's kind of the tapping into this entrepreneurial idea that you have to actually try these things and you have to do these things and not just take one shot at a video creation and say, oh, that was a cool concept, or analyzing a huge data set and getting a few interesting nuggets from it. Okay, but what are you going to do with that? How are you going to take that to the next step? You have to feed it back into the next loop and be able to try. And with almost all of these AI tools, like you mentioned this idea of kind of an automation bias, that also applies. It's another way to frame it is like an easy button bias. Everyone thinks, oh, AI is so magical because the user experience is frankly so simple and impressive that if you can't just press a button and spit out your new PowerPoint as an RFP response or a piece of creative or the full video, it just does 80% of it for you and you have to do kind of the last 20% last mile delivery. You got to be happy with that 80% and put in the elbow grease to make it actually usable, polished work product like you'd be proud of. That takes effort. It takes a willingness to fail, to try and fail. And you will try and fail, but you have to keep at it the same way you built your business in the first place.
I think the capability sets are there pretty quick, and the early adopters that are like, copywriting, script writing, legal review, even business modeling or financial modeling comes pretty quick through the AI platforms, right? And those engagements start to move quickly. I think the slower place we've seen the adoption is in the more complicated, the creative process, where it's really protective from the creators. And they're going, well, I don't want to. Yes, it's a cool tool and maybe I can use the tool to do this or that. But the realization that you have to move all the way through this optimization loop. And if you get the optimization loop, then is it 80%? Is it 90%? Are you allowing it to create the next campaign for you, the next creative for you that is then giving the feedback loops of the testing? And then how quickly can you optimize for success?
Well, it kind of compresses what you just described as a linear timeline. Like if you have a creative person who's used to, if you say, I need you to create this, storyboard, this video for me, they're say, okay, that takes me 4 weeks or whatever timeline it might take. You're not going to say, I need you to make 5 of those. You're going to say, well, I don't have time for that. This is what I'm going to make a good work product. Then you're going to try, to test it. You're going to see how it performs. You're going to get that data. And you're going to go back and say, oh, that didn't perform with this audience that we wanted to target. So can you make this tweak? And it's really trial and error, what you're describing over a long period of time. But now with intelligence being increasingly cheaper and instantaneously available, you can create 10 of them at the same time with ideas that, sitting around a conference room, you had 10 ideas, 5 of which you thought were good. Okay, make them all. Let's see how they perform. Maybe one of the ideas that you all poo-pooed around the table turns out to be performing pretty well, and you can try them all now.
I think even to that end, like especially when you think of the Global Launch Summit, right? I think even to that end, the capability for you to be able to not just create and test and validate faster than ever before, but to go even beyond it, where now it's cross borders and cross language and cultural, being able to use AI to build cultural sensitivities or colloquialisms inside of the creative for certain areas, making sure the right food is in there, but using AI from a tool base to literally launch global launches, same day global launches. I think that's the craziest part of where we sit now, is like that is attainable.
And
today.
That's very important too, because my wife's Korean, and I always remember when I first walked into my mother-in-law's house with shoes on, they're like, that's crazy, unheard of. And in the US, like, a lot of people make you take your shoes off when you come in the house, but culturally it's like an insane thing to do. They're like, why would you bring the dirt from inside out there? Now, if you showed an ad of someone walking around with shoes on in the house in Korea, they'd be like, what is this? What are they, crazy, these people? But that's not something that we would necessarily catch without going to a Korean focus group or expert. And now you get your AI, you say, hey, I want to adapt this to the Korean market. marketing smartphones or chips there, whatever it is. They say, oh, okay, here's the 5 things you need to change: cultural context, not real cultural translation, not just linguistic.
Yeah, I think the cultural sensitivity to it is huge, and certainly like the place we saw the fastest impact for us was obviously English to Spanish, English to Spanish, French, German, the main languages, right? It's a little difficult, like when you start to try to get lip match or take an actor and have them start speaking in another, in Korean or Japanese, the sync is a little off because the language is so different, right? And the mouth movement is so different. So what we found in that sense is you have to create the characters, and maybe you have to own your own characters, but now it's moving so quick that you can create. I can take a picture of you and I can recreate you in a second and have you doing a pitch on all kinds of things. That's how crazy and how fast it moves now. But the cultural significance of it, even like when we start to think about product in this organization, how you're doing product packaging. Well, like you can move to a white box model and literally package for any market you're going to in a second, because you can change the language and introduce new markets faster than ever before. And I think that's the practical uses of AI technology to accelerate penetration into other markets and accelerate your growth, which ultimately leads to higher revenue in the end, I think is the goal for the organization as we sit here.
And if you were to ask a chatbot, like some of the instant impacts on advertising, one of the first things that tells you is like, oh, dynamic creative optimization. But oftentimes people are talking about like, okay, you just take this simple display banner ad and you're going to change the color scheme or change the wording a little bit. Now, if you shot a video ad and someone was holding this bottle of water with the Palms logo on it, you could change this to like a sparkling whatever flavor, and that is going to play better in the Korean market, the Brazilian market, and that would be some serious video editing to take a bottle that's in someone's hand that they're moving and
motion
drinking.
Tracking, yep.
That's not a Photoshop task or a simple video editing task. And now it's pretty readily available at almost no cost.
I was playing with a new AI tech the other day, and I took a picture offline of one of our products. We rep Greenmarks is one of our clients, right? And I take their 24-volt drill, a picture of it, just sitting on a shelf, and I put it in a cat's hands and have the cat functionally using the tool. Now, mind you, silly as can be, right? But in 10 seconds later, it is extrapolated out the mathematical equation that is what the tool is, figured out the 3D dimension of it, put it with the character, integrated it, and has it using it. I mean, that's that capability. And again, I've said this before, like 2 years ago at this conference, it was the first AI conversation at one of these. And I said, look, it's only going to get better, and it's going to get better faster than you could ever imagine. So I think the challenge and I'd love to get your opinion on the challenge is how fast do you have to move and how quick do you have to adopt this tech? Because I think I do believe there's going to be entire companies left behind in a minute.
I mean, Sam Altman has this quote, the CEO of OpenAI, that, and he kind of said it flippantly to the former chief digital officer of Starbucks. I forgot the gentleman's name, but he said, they were like, what do you think the impact is on marketing and advertising? He said, 95% of all of the tasks that marketers do today will be handled by AI. And they're like, on what timeline? He said, 5 years roughly. And he said that about 2 years ago at this point. And I think that timeline is, a little ambitious. He's talking about the advent of artificial general intelligence, which is a term that people debate. But I think that the raw intelligence and capability that's already out there in these models, even open source models, is far beyond what any of us are even scratching the surface with of adoption. So if all AI development were to stop in terms of like the frontier labs and their models today, and there'd be no more innovation, we still have probably 10, 15 years of implementing that into the application and product layer. Even getting some of these video creation tools, getting it into something like a Premiere or Final Cut where you could actually, manipulate these elements. There are so many different tools like that. There's really no killer app for AI right now. We still have chatbots, which were only selected because they're the most versatile UI to be able to show off what these things can do. And the model makers have actually no idea what they can do. They don't come with an instruction manual. they rely on, they say sometimes, people ask them, didn't you know that it would be able to do this, this, or that? And they said, well, no, actually, we learned that it's good at legal work or, marketing copy. We learn from people trying it. And so that's an opportunity for us to be at the frontier here. We must try these things and always invite AI to the table. Obviously, there are, privacy and legal considerations. For 2 or 3 years in the legal space, I heard this as kind of an impediment, that people said, let's see what happens here. That's not going to fly anymore. I'm not saying to violate any rules at your company, but this is something people have to get on board with, or you will be facing an existential crisis in the next 4 or 5 years. But in the interim, even if you don't completely revolutionize your competitive identity, you can still obtain a huge advantage and see great margin growth, great, much better output and results and efficiency, just by being faster and being willing to learn. Learning is very hard. Adult learning and organizational learning and adaptation are both incredibly hard things to do, but they're what we have to do now.
I heard a line the other day that, and I'll talk about a couple of them. One of them is, you don't have to be richer and you don't necessarily have to be better, but you do have to be faster. And if you're faster, you can get to market quicker, which means you can create more opportunity for yourself. And the second, I was reading a story about some robots and training the robots to be able to get function, and how when they ran the tool back through AI, they were able to upload to the robot learning of how to walk, move in certain situations that would have taken 10 years, and it was done in 2 hours. And that kind of like acceleration of integration and that acceleration of capability, I think, is the hard part. But it's more, I think the greater challenge is the adoption. And yeah, I'm going to say this, quite frankly, it's the challenge is that leadership in a lot of these companies come from a different era and a different period, and they're having trouble adapting. Even the workforce inside of it is having trouble adapting because it's moving so much faster. You almost have to break your own rules and say, stop thinking of it like you've ever thought of it before. Understand the principles of the goals you're trying to achieve. I'm trying to get from here to create marketing that's going to sell a product here, that's going to drive things. Don't think of the linear way you ever thought of it before. Think about all the tools that can get you there faster today.
Yeah, at AI Digital, we're asked, and our team members are asked all the time, over the past couple of years, what are you doing about AI, or how was AI used in this work? And people are almost, because of the way ChatGPT was spoken about a couple of years ago, is almost like you're cheating on the test by using it. People are standoffish. They don't want to answer it and say it. And now we kind of train people to talk proudly about how they're using AI. Like you need to educate the clients that you of course will adhere to your privacy guidelines and legal guidelines, but you must use AI for these things. And to be able to talk about that and bring it out of the shadows of the organization is a huge impact.
Yeah, we find even if you're building full brand guides and full inside of your bots, inside of your tool sets, if you can build the story of the brand and teach the story of the brand and the voice of the brand and isolate that into a situation where you've controlled the input, where you said, here's the database of tools of which you can reach inside of and speak of the brand voice. As you start to correct and it learns the brand voice and it learns the message points and it learns the missions piece of it, yes, engage, because you can get more creative out faster and you can get to market faster. I think the challenge that we're going to be facing over the next 6 to 8 months, and I'm like with your leadership, 2 years ago, I came back in and said, guys, if you can't tell me in 5 days how AI is going to affect your job, you should probably get another job and you should leave this company. That was a bold statement to look at staff and say, figure it out now because it's going to catch you. But now as we start to process through that, when we start to look at the function of now fast forward 2 years, and now how's it being used on a daily basis, and then where's it going? How are digital asset management systems going to affect? How's your tech stack of your results data and getting proper analytics going to affect? And have you made those choices and changes yet in your organization? If you haven't, maybe you're in trouble.
Yeah, there's a big difference too between what you said of the mandate that you gave your team, which is smart, but let's say you didn't do anything following that. I'm sure you did plenty following that. you might have people who get nervous about their jobs, who go in and start playing around with these different AI tools, and they use them, and you pay them salary, right? So someone getting 3 times faster on a particular task, which is what a lot of empirical data says, just means that, Johnny can go play golf in the middle of the day. That doesn't mean you pay Johnny less, right? So there is a huge personal productivity versus organizational productivity gap that doesn't automatically get bridged without mechanisms to centralize and scale that innovation. That doesn't mean everything needs to be top down, but it's more than just a leadership proclamation. There's like actual institutional mechanisms that you have to set up to encourage this work and kind of lean in high stakes situations to use it.
Yeah, I think from a top, like we applied the top down methodology, but what we found was it was the early adopters were those that didn't have structural limitations.
Yeah.
Like if you put them, if you boxed this is the process too much, then you would find, well, this is the process. I will use this tool inside the process instead of rethinking the entire process. That's the challenge. Like getting a lot of times what we've seen in the other companies, and we work with a lot of big companies on the marketing side of it. When we get inside their marketing organizations and we get inside the structure of the way they've done it typically, and they're like, well, we'll use it here. We'll use some AI tools here, and we'll use it here, and we'll use it here. But it doesn't change the structure of the way they're thinking about it. It has to change the structure. You have to like step back from it fully and go, no, this is all new. This is completely different.
Yeah, you certainly have to rethink it. That's kind of that linear, like creative to testing the ad and see how it works format that we talked about. But it's really, really important to rethink these processes. Going back to something you said earlier, I have this slide, which is Rafael Nadal, like reaching out like this, like really outstretched on a clay court. And on the slide, it just says the right footwork for a faster game. And that's what people need to think about now. It's having the data hygiene and organization and readiness, and the processes in place. And on that second part, a lot of people misinterpret the process part and just say, oh yeah, I've got all my processes documented. They're in these Google Docs or wherever they are. You need to rethink those processes. You don't just take them all at face value and say, how do I achieve AI automation from point A to B to C? It's like, well, maybe there is no point B anymore, or even point C. You're just doing something that is an end around the entire process.
Right, it's A squared.
Yeah,
it's like you're screwing the leg directly from, for us, we looked at it first, and I think maybe this is useful to some groups. We obviously looked at it from the creative implementation first, but then immediately and simultaneous to that, we looked at, you have to build your data sets the right way, and you have to get it organized where you can use the tools in there for you. If you can't if you don't have accessibility to the data elements that you need, you're not going to get the knowledge or the learning. You're not going to feed the machine the right way. So it will never get smarter if you're not giving it valid information to go forward. If you do it the right way, it starts giving you insights immediately that you're like, holy shit, that would have taken me a month of analyzing data, going back and looking at the creative, looking at every piece of it, looking at the effects, and great minds sitting there doing it, where now I can get that information in minutes as opposed to waiting months or hours for reports, which means I make faster decisions, better decisions based off of real information that's now instantly accessible to me. The power of that is limitless.
Well, it's interesting, a familiar refrain, like we think in terms of the kind of how computers behave and how programming language works in the previous generation, like before the generative era. And so people like garbage in, garbage out is something people understand. What's different now is you still need the right data to show, to put into the AI, but it could be garbage in that it's a complete mess, completely disorganized in some cases, and it'll still come up with grabbing the right conclusions for you. Now, is it going to do better if it's actually organized? Of course, but it does allow you to, it can supercharge that act of getting organized in the first place.
Yeah.
You see companies like the one that Meta acquired, I think it's Scale AI, on their $1 billion per person shopping spree. I think that company literally just labels data for AI.
Yeah.
And that should show you the importance of it, how much is being spent on it by these mega cap tech companies.
Yeah, you can certainly put order to it quickly. Like on the smallest of scales or whatnot, it can help put the order behind it, which is crazy, right? Because you're like, here's a bunch of useless or disconnected bits of information. order and analyze
Yeah.
this collection of
Right.
information and give me a predictive output of what I should do next. And when you see all this, to your point, yes, that layer is awesome, right? But if you're not collecting it, the better you can collect it in a meaningful way on all levels. We have some clients where we're looking at every piece of social data they've done for 10 years. Everything they've done in every paid campaign, every piece of point of sale item that they've sold in retail, every transaction in marketplace, every transaction in their e-commerce, every engagement they had anywhere with a customer, every call, all of that feeding in, and then you can start to get models and playbooks that you would not have seen.
Yeah.
You might have known it in your gut. You might have seen the performance. You might have seen, your overall, profit go up and your EBITDA controls and your revenue levels hit the right where they're supposed to be, but you wouldn't have seen the why. And now you can see the why.
Yeah, spelled out very clearly and plainly for you in any language and any way you need it to understand it. And that's really important, because I've looked at conclusions from data sometimes and said, it still doesn't really resonate with me. And just getting it to frame it back to you in different ways, in a way that's resonant with your business objective, is so important. Something you said earlier too is that why I think leadership is absolutely critical in this moment.
Yeah.
Really technology's falling out of the sky and into our laps, and it's a question of, okay, we don't need to be on the absolute state-of-the-art line, but if you think of kind of like a graph of innovation, this is what the models are doing and from the frontier labs, and the pace of organizational adoption is,
Dragging.
steadily increasing, but dragging, the gap increases. But this space is your zone of opportunity. A huge zone of opportunity, and you have to just step into it and do something about it. Why leadership is so important is that, especially if you have 20, 50, 100, 1,000 employees, you are leading people through a moment of profound technological and probably societal change. The way commerce takes place altogether, not just advertising or media or marketing generally. The way commerce takes place, the way certain societal interactions take place, they will all change, whether you see it right now or not. And so preparing people for that future and doing so in a way that, meets your business objectives now and into the future is really, really important. And you said some leaders aren't cut out for that.
Yeah.
But what I disagree with, and I don't know, I'm not putting words in your mouth that this is what you're saying with, is that, I see certain people say, I'm older, I'm 60, I don't understand AI. Well, you don't need to understand how exactly it works. To go back on what I said about the easy button, there are some elements here that you're putting, think of it, if you were a good manager of people, that's why leadership is so important. If you're a good manager of people, you can tell someone what you want. If they do it wrong, you tell them why you don't like it and how it can improve. You are great with AI.
Yeah.
You just need to try. So don't let the idea that, you're from a different generation hold you back, because the only thing that'll hold you back is your attitude and unwillingness to try.
Yeah, I think from a standpoint, and I think you described it really well, that separation point between the growth arc. You don't have to be on the bleeding edge of the arc. You don't. But that space between, if you engage inside there, you'll move your organization faster. And to validate back what you're saying on leadership, I'm not saying because they're aged out or whatnot, because they're older in mentality. I agree with you. If you understand how to manage people, you can direct AI to do what you want it to do. And if you can communicate clearly your needs and directions inside there, you can make it do incredible things for you. But you have to embrace, and if you're in leadership in a company and you're in the middle of that mix, to your point, you don't have to do all those pieces, but you do need to make sure your team is moving in that direction, because if you don't, it's a nightmare for you. Your competitors are going to move past you faster than you know what happened. And then, yes, AI will help catch up.
Yeah.
But you'll have to invest a lot more to get there later. So,
and it's interesting, because if you've built your organization with, let's say you have 20 employees, and you have 17 of them are different specialists, a graphic design, a video editor, an audio editor, whatever the different, a programmatic specialist, whatever the different roles are, those people are very siloed, which has been an efficient way to work. Now, to just immediately flip the switch and tell them all to be more generalists and cross-pollinate and kind of obliterate departmental lines, and all of a sudden they're in these little pods working together cross-functionally, That's not natural. And so I'm not saying you replace these people, but certain people may need to be shuffled around in the organization to kind of a higher and better purpose that suits the new way that work will take place. And you need to think of that when you're doing your hiring. Are you hiring kind of more junior or specialist type roles, or are you hiring people who are a bit more flexible and generalist that can kind of dabble in different parts of the process and see the whole chessboard and piece things together with the help of AI?
Yeah, it definitely changes the group dynamics inside your organizations for sure, because you have to rethink how those groups are working, because the specialization becomes less and the understanding of the whole scope becomes larger. The good news is that in our world, and I think in marketing and advertising in general, that greater growth and understanding and knowledge means your output continues to become better, because what you'll find in a lot of more traditional organizations is the specialists here may not understand always the reason why you're doing this for the business goal. They're rinsing and repeating and they're doing their task, but maybe they're not seeing the big picture and the grand scope of how the pieces are moving on the chessboard. So, man, incredible conversation. Thank you for the insight. You guys have been watching from the Global Launch Summit from ERA. We're here in Las Vegas. Next conference is coming up is in Mallorca.
Oh,
sounds like a horrible place.
Put that on my calendar.
Like, if you want to go, just check out any of the clicks on the screen or in the links that you find. Check out ERA Global. If you have products or brands that you're trying to reach out to get them across all of the planet, say all the people that do that are here. Your distribution pieces, your tools here, your technology groups, the understanding of how to do the marketing and the speed to market is right here in front of you. So thanks again.
Yeah.
See you guys in the next show. It's good.
Yeah, it's fun.